G'day everyone, my name is Braeden Kennedy. I run a business called Back Animations and I am a freelance 2D animator. I've done mostly short films in the past as well as micro short films. Well, it's kind of an interesting question. You see, originally I never even thought of doing animation for film work. Originally it was intent to just do animation for the internet, for YouTube and Newgrounds and all that because, global platform and everything. But it was only like 3 years ago when I was introduced to film from a uni mate of mine, and he introduced me to a crew when he was doing a private screening of a film he was producing. And that feature-length film was Marital Problems. And it was just out of the blue, he asked me, and I decided, you know what, I'll go. It's something new. And then after the screening, apparently I got to know some other filmmakers that were there. And a fresh face, wasn't familiar with the scene or anything. I introduced myself to a lot of people and I say, I'm a freelance animator. And soon enough, there were a few individuals that thought, hey, I would love to work with you at some point on a film. I'm like, and what was going in my head thinking, well, it would be like mass amount of months of work on a project and everything. But I realized that, there can be other sort of variety of 2D animation work I could do for like bumpers, trailers, credit rolls, even short films, which I've already have done. Alright, to be specific, my first real genuine short film I made was I Have Gustav, which I done back in 2017. And that was mainly my one main short film I've done so far. In the past, I've done what you call micro short films, which go from around about a minute or two. And you know what? For the record, I have done some personal short films that are really just amateur looking. And I look back on it now thinking, whoa, I definitely need to improve my skills and everything. But that's something that I sort of like look back on for amusement and just to explore these past ideas that may be useful in the current time. Well, my first preference is actually an animator that was famous on the internet, not film actually. That animator was David Firth, who made the infamous Salad Fingers series he started in 2004. I was really drawn in with his art style, how it takes a viewer like me to another world that's dark and surreal, and I was really inspired by the surrealism and just this out of the world plot and narrative and how the characters interact. Like, they're just very creepy, yet it's got a cute factor, but not too dark in that sort of element. And I just loved how engaging the series was. And then I thought, I'm going to do this sort of thing one day. Learn 2D animation, which I can share with my friends and random people across the interwebs. I mean, that would be a great idea. The other two, I would say, I've seen a few of his films. There's Don Bluth. I just love how fluent his animation is, especially one of his well-known ones, Anastasia. I mean, I was enthralled with the first half of the film, which, mostly the intro. I thought how amazing the detail was, and I actually thought it looked real live action. I thought, wow. And number 3, that would be... Actually, it would be my number 1, but I'll say number 3 because there's a list. Mike Judge, who created the Beavis and Butthead series and the King of the Hill series. They're personally 2 of my all-time favourite cartoon animation series. I just like I mentioned before with the engagement with the characters in David Firth's work, I loved how Mike Judge created his world based on his hometown Texas, and how he created some a world of his own with his characters that you give it a good element of it's a real life world, but with some fictional elements to some of the crazy shenanigans that goes on in Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill. And yeah. Well, my vision I bring to my work is, well, I've gone through periods where I've gone through trying to make things beautiful and really colourful, and then sometimes I like to explore something more dark and a bit more surreal. That's like inspiration. That was the inspiration I've got from David Firth, and I explore that element in that, and you know, from the beginning, like I loved to do something that was colourful and something that was come in my world. It was mainly my obsession for the beach and the ocean and just the surf culture. And then through my uni years, while I was studying uni, I thought it's about time I started to bring out some more imagination, something that's not from reality. And I look back on it and I think, it's amazing that, what your imagination can lead to. There are some visions that could appeal to others and some visions that doesn't appeal to others but appeals to me because I love to embrace that world. And now these days I like to try to explore like beautiful visions of just things that is positive, anything with positive vibes, nothing dark. I always switch back on those worlds. That's actually a tough question. I mean, because I've explored, dark themes and bright themes. Well, I'll break it down. My most favourite thing I worked on was that it was enjoyable to work on was I Have Gustav. But I say that so far it has been my secret animated series in the works with the pilot, which is Bowler and Bandage. I mean, that was my sort of personal main event that I want to bring to the world, which I had encapsulated everything that I find, fun and bright, and something that it draws inspiration from my personal life and add those elements into it. And another favourite in the sort of surreal dark world was Dreamtides, and that was based on like a visualization of not so much of a lucid dream, but just a weird dream that a young woman experiences. And yeah, I just loved how I could just bring it was basically just bring out my sketchbook drawings to life and put them into motion. I had a lot of fun exploring that concept.
What do you want, a small cat?
What I'm currently working on at the moment is Bowl and Bandage. I've actually worked on it for just over 18 months now with post-production. With pre-production, it took me I've lost count how many months. That's been my major project at the moment, that I want to showcase my skills and talent as an animator more than anything I've ever worked on in the past. And yeah, so at the moment I'm just doing some retouches and everything, trying to polish it up. Well, I studied two IT diplomas that had 2D animation as a subject, and I'd done that at TAFE, at Victoria University. But for the real deal of really putting my learning curves to the test to better my skills was at SEA Quantum in South Melbourne. And yeah, it was a very intense course. I mean, cramming 3 years worth of studies into 2 years was just chaotic, but I valued everything that I've learnt from the mentors and the lecturers. I mean, it really gave me a real eye opener about things because originally I'm a self-taught animator for a number of years before I started to study animation, and yeah, so that was a bit of a whirlwind for me. Just realize that if I this is the sort of place I'm gonna have to be. This is the sort of thing you're gonna have to study to maybe even be on the likes of Don Bluth or Mike Judge or even David Firth and other notable animators around the world. With the biggest challenges so far with the Australian film industry is that we kind of did have a golden era, which I'd say I've heard the Ozploitation. I mean, just with the years of notable films like Mad Max and in the 70s and 80s, and then you got like one hit wonders like Young Einstein, and even just currently in the last decade with Baz Luhrmann's Australia. I mean, it's a really great question. I mean, we've gone through years where Aussie filmmakers had busted their guts to market and promote their films overseas, like not with just film festivals, but also just direct with the producers and directors. You want to showcase them all. But I think the most biggest challenge so far is just production costs. I mean, I've learnt from, after, through the Mad Max trilogy, how it was shot entirely in Australia. Then next comes Mad Max Fury Road, and all the location shootings are shot somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Namibia in Africa, mainly for all the racing scenes, as well as all the cost-effective ways of blue screening all the rest of these scenes. I mean, if it works, it works. But you know what? It's a great question to know what's the biggest struggle in the Australian film industry, because you got production costs and budgeting issues. You got going out of your way to save up just to go overseas to promote a film to a producer, and also trying to even write up and produce a film that's going to appeal to an international audience. Coming from a country that has such a unique culture and a unique approach to filmmaking. I mean, you got films that from the underground that is most notable in Australia, and then that's never been brought to life overseas. And I mean, I think about even the most classic comedy film, arguably from popular vote, is The Castle. I mean, that would be, imagine if the Working Dog Productions, which I believe they were the ones who made The Castle, promoted to the UK and the USA. Well, it's a film that sort of pretty much engages with just every Australian household, not so much engaging with a non-Australian household, because it's just showing a typical larrikin modern Australian lifestyle, which non-Australians wouldn't find appealing or engaging because they can't relate to it. Yeah, so really, there's no real straight answer personally of what's the biggest struggle in the Australian film industry, to be honest. Well, at the moment I'm still pinning on Boll and Banch to make a series one day. If I'm lucky enough to collaborate with the studios, that would be fantastic. But I haven't. It's still under works at the moment because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I want to make it look good and appealing, everything. But future projects in the moment, just off the top of my head, it's funny. I've already got the ideas, but I haven't even wrote it down yet because I've been focusing on Boll and Banch way too much. I was straight on the top of my head already, what's been hanging in my head for a couple of months now, was doing an animated short film based on the life of living in Melbourne with its weird climate, which I was going to title it Cruel Summer, just showing aspects of a typical Melbourne summer with 4 seasons in a day. But and I wanted to add a bit of a surreal scenery to it, make it look out of this world a bit. That would sort of make people want to sort of cringe and thinking, "Whew, this is," or even just add some intensity to it, because the whole world thinks that Australia's always hot and dry, and yeah, but no, not in Melbourne. It's 4 seasons a day in the summer. It's ridiculous. And also I was thinking about do an animated short film based on a character living on the spectrum, but I haven't. I mean, I love the concept, but I haven't got around to writing up anything that would, because it's a bit of a challenge. I don't want to add too much the idea of just reflecting my personal life, because I'm on the autism spectrum, but I wanted to sort of like a sort of fictional life, with the research that I've gotten from getting to know other adults on the autism spectrum with their, their life growing up on the spectrum. What would be a great name for production, not too literally, would just be like for a company name to have a witty yet corporate feel to the name of production, but also just have a production that will not so much do their best with their services, but to collaborate the best they can and really embrace the teamwork to have a production work with other crew to bring some magic into the production. And if there's a problem that needs to be solved, you don't go all bark, bark, bark. You get together, you talk it over, you come up with your plans, you come up with your resolutions, and you shouldn't have this reputation of having attitude at being and going at someone's throat. And also not to have this sort of build up an ego that you are going to claim that you are the Ritz, you're the ant's pants out of all productions that exist in the industry, and you want to go out your way to say, work for me, like I know my stuff, I'm not amateur. And the term amateur gets thrown around a lot. I mean, a production is a production. I mean, with the world of social media, especially with YouTube, even those amateur productions can whip up something amazing and still have a great crew, at a low production cost. My biggest challenge for me is sort of the social aspects. Just having these little online chat meetings with other folks, just to a variety of things. Chatting about what I'm going to be doing in the project, and and just deadlines. Basically, it's is the deadlines. I mean, as an animator, There's this quote that you might have heard from Toy Story 2 from the elderly toy repairman. You can't rush art. That is one quote that every animator stands by. You don't rush art. You don't need to put pressure on yourself to do something in a rush and come out with poor quality. Animation is a form of art. Animation is bringing something static and bringing it out in motion for the world to just be enthralled by everything that just moves. The characters, they need to engage in everything, and just the background of the world of an animation production exists by. Another thing too, another challenge that I have also faced is just, it's really putting yourself out there just with networking, finding the right people to work with you in the future and the present, and just building relationships with other creatives, you know. For me, if I was to work on an animation with another animator, you know, I'm going to have to find a networking group that has animators who come by and mingle one another. And it's also just to convince other creatives, you know, I would love to work with you. I love your work, or vice versa. You know, you got pretty good talent. How about we do a project together, you know? And we sort of negotiate who's going to write up the animation piece and who's going to produce and whatnot. Don't be afraid to ever look deep down the rabbit hole just to get a bit of inspiration and imagination. I mean, just take note of what you see around you in this life. Also, as an animator, don't ever stop drawing digitally or traditionally on pieces of paper, or even if you draw on the furniture, or even on the tabletop, or even on the walls. I mean, if you see something that engages you, that'd be great for an animation. Always keep a little sketchbook with you in a backpack or in the pocket. Jot it down, roughly sketch it. Even write words down, describe what you saw, you know. And for narrative, take note, just get inspiration from other people, like what you witness, what you see from other people in public, even your own family and friends. Don't be afraid to take elements from reality, and don't be afraid to explore those elements. Don't be afraid to take something small, and try to take the time to stretch it out into something that's got a plot and a narrative and a world of characters and a setting it will be. And if the idea doesn't work, don't kick yourself. Try again with something new, because as long as you keep your creative juices flowing in your mind and you're still willing to draw inspiration, you know, you're gonna whip up something amazing for the world to see that they're gonna enjoy. And even personally, my biggest issue I had, you know, when I was learning animation, it was trying to find my art style. It was trying to find my sense of storytelling. It was the issue with making, if it was a comedy, make sure that this comedy piece will be funny to a crowd of people and a certain audience. I'm planning to stay here for as long as possible. I don't want to go to Hollywood. I mean, personally, I don't, as much as that's where the whole name and lights concept, and that's where the big boys play. In a personal note, I just don't like the animation studio culture that's gone so far with regarding with Disney and Nickelodeon and other major animation production studios and what they create these days. I mean, they've lost. I feel like they've just started to lose their element and all that. But what I'm really trying to say is that I want to keep, you know, my name back, animation's thriving just in Melbourne. I mean, maybe I might have to move overseas for a production, but I don't ever want to plan to live there permanently and leave Melbourne behind. I built the name back, animations in Melbourne. I brought out all my ideas in animation on paper here in Melbourne. Melbourne was the place where I found that spark to get my name out there amongst, firstly, the Melbourne indie film industry, as well as the very small percentage of Melbourne-based animators too. I mean, it would be amazing, you know. It's like for any other animator who would live in Melbourne, you know. Even, like, what inspired me to even want to stay here is Adam Elliott, who made the Oscar-winning short film Harvey Crumpet. He made his whole entire film in Melbourne. He went to Hollywood just for the for the Oscars because he was nominated for best short film, and his film won it. He got the award, and next thing you know, he's getting a lot of Hollywood fame, and he's already made a name for himself. But he came back to Melbourne to work on his next project, and he's taking his time with it, and he's gonna go win it live again to the international audience while he's still staying in Melbourne. And I just want to say thanks for listening, guys. I mean, I'm just a guy with just a very wide amount of animation, and I'm just, animation has always been a passion of mine. I don't want to ever let it go. I want to keep making things that are beautiful in any nature for people to enjoy, as well as try to surprise myself with what I could think up and what I can animate. And I just will never stop exploring new ideas that while I'm still learning new techniques in animation that I haven't even fully learnt yet. I know one day, I'll have a big break, but I don't know when. But I haven't given up for myself yet. I'm excited already for the future.